Hello, Emma. Welcome to the Headspace podcast where we talk about mental health. So, you're one of my friends, and why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
So my name's Emma, as you know. I'm also a registered early childhood educator. So I work within the education field. I have been working with children with special needs and various emotions for almost over 2 years in the field, but I've worked with children through camps and etc. through almost 10 years. Um, my passion is mainly like giving kids what I technically didn't have when I was younger. So kind of having that inclusion, that support, and the love that they didn't really receive. I didn't really receive when I was younger within the education field. My interest is mainly like video games, music. Um, I'm getting that artistic feel as well.
All right, that's really interesting. So, you'd say, how do you think that your job supporting children has affected your mental health?
Um, it varies. So obviously, in previous works, it can be great to give the impact to children and coworkers, but also good to always have that work and life balance in between. So make sure that you not just take care of the children that you work with and your coworkers, but also to make sure that you take care of yourself. Because I know in the past I have been more of a perfectionist, so obviously being more, you know, caring for other people than myself. So kind of starting to put myself more first so then I can be able to, care for them properly.
Oh, yeah, I think that's really important, keeping yourself first instead of, because you get caught up in only helping others, you kind of forget to help yourself, because at the end of the day, you're the one that's the most important to you, right?
hmm
And do you think that sounds a bit selfish or like is that valid?
Um, I mean, it's not in a sense of just like I wouldn't call it selfish because I'm always wanting to care for one another, but obviously it's hard to I know one of my ex coworkers I used to work with, what she did is that obviously it's like oxygen masks at when you're in an airplane. You're going to it's sometimes you're always going to care for your child first, but then it's hard to do that because then, well, you need an oxygen mask for yourself as well. So obviously being able to breathe together and doing it together, or as well as like talking to someone as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I really like that analogy. It's like even if you care for others so much, you still have to care for yourself. So what's something you've done to care for yourself and put yourself first?
I would say high school was kind of a major turning point for me, specifically because I graduated during the pandemic. So technically speaking, I used to be bullied a lot and through all my education. So obviously hard to find somebody to kind of relate to or to be able to kind of find that connection. So of course, near let's say grade 11, I was peer pressured, doing a lot of things I shouldn't have done. So kind of around that time, I also got more closer to God. This is more of a religious standpoint, but in a sense of just like personally for me, communicating to God and having a stronger faith with God became to see a lot more things that were like not that important. For example, popularity, things that are just not really needed. Like for example, like some things like money is not really. I mean, yes, in this economy nowadays, of course, but just it's something that we shouldn't really idolize as much because the main thing that we should really care about is each other rather than just seen as, like having a big $1 million mansion, a big sports car, and having those things can be seen as like, I guess, greedy in a way. So just by having like, you know, think of you don't know when they're gone, right? So by having that connection with, your family and think about yourself. By me, building that connection with God as well as then kind of thinking myself first and bringing up my confidence. I didn't care what people said to me. I was like, okay, you said this to me, I could care less, working on myself. And then I noticed my grades skyrocketed. not that I was really bad at grades, but in a sense of just like I got all 90s my graduating year, my entire year, which is such an improvement. I did amazing because I didn't take, what anyone said to me, which is amazing.
So you think once you focus on yourself, you're able to improve drastically. Yeah.
Very much so.
Well, that's good to hear then. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What and you touched on bullying. How do you think you got through the bullying?
Um, it was very hard to be honest because, having, ADHD and, learning disability, anxiety, a lot of things. But it's, been very hard to be, singled out. And that's one reason why I want to, make, to be in this education field so that I can have these children feel loved and included and supported. But mainly, it has been a struggle and it was very much hard. But like I said, I would always lean on to feeling like my mother or sometimes my sister or my father, or even God in a sense of more of a religious standpoint. But rather than it's to always have a safe space is one of the major things. For example, school wasn't really my safe space because, I might have a couple of odd friends, but I had trust issues. It was very hard to, because obviously with all the bullying and people were, well, pieces of shit. I'm sorry if I was not able to swear. People are bad.
Uh-huh.
Um, but even
Mhm.
then, like trying to always have a safe space with someone or with, at home or make that safe space just for you. Like maybe it's going to the library and having a quiet time to kind of bring your mental state to a calm and a peaceful, space. So then you at least have that kind of moment where you can, help your mental state.
Right, so you really got through that bullying through your techniques that I'm happy you shared and they sounded like were effective.
Mhm.
So,
Of
how do
course.
hey, that's good. How do you think ADHD has affected your life though?
Um, it's affected my life in a lot of different ways. I mean, obviously with, in school, trying to make friends was difficult. Work can be difficult because how I kind of, you know, try to it's not that I can't do my job. It's just honestly with ADHD, it's mainly just the brain is built a bit differently. So for example, I might need a little extra communication or you need to be more clear or just it's not like anything bad. I try to put it into a more positive perspective. I know it can be a pain for some people. I understand. But I try to put it in the positive light. For example, just kind of, seeing different people that actually do have ADHD and or even like communicating to an occupational therapist to kind of build those like routines and help the pieces. Like I know personally, and this is more of a personal thing, but I have, communicated to, done different things to help me and communicate to my doctor and everything, but mainly just to have those like counseling kind of things because it really helped me because especially as a young adult in with the ADHD, working now in the field rather than in education, my routines have changed and more relying on just myself rather than having a consistent routine with school. So now having this work field, kind of having like different routines, it's good to have, not that I can't rely on my own self, but in the sense of just like having a little bit more guidance in some areas to help me kind of make sure that it's consistent and I'm in good health as well, rather just than, physically, but also mentally as well. So kind of helping with routines, helping with eating, helping with um what else is like, just like personal things as well, relationships. And I'm not saying I can't do those things, but in a sense of just like having some guidance here and there, whether that be from a parent or an occupational therapist, or just a therapist, etc. But having some guidance. But I know that ADHD has, I wouldn't say labeled me as, a troublemaker or a pain in the ass, but in a sense of just like, you know, I'm different and I'm fine that I'm different, but I want to make sure that I can or I can make a safe space for children and coworkers alike. And be able that like, hey, just because you have autism, just because you have anxiety, just because you have selective mutism, just because you have ADHD, learning disability, whatever. I'm there to help because I've worked with plenty of children that have those abilities, and their ability, not a disability. Just because they're different doesn't mean that they can't do what they can.
Yeah, I think it's really good to recognize that these people aren't worse in any way. They're just different. Because I feel like we, as a society, have a tendency to shun people who are different. Yeah, even in my life, like I feel like I've been called weird a lot, and I feel like I must have some sort of illness or something. Not that like it's super bad, but I feel like when you're seen as different, people will just look down upon you sometimes. So it's good that you're keeping that in mind and not passing that on to the children you work with.
Q.
Yeah. So when you're working with these children, when you realize one of these children has like a certain like disability or ability, as you said, how do you act differently?
Mm, well, it varies in different workplaces because, for example, the school board will have like IEPs, so an individual educational plan. So, for example, like I had when I was younger, so kind of just like having a little like list to kind of help them guide them into having a better education. And for different places, that's an ISP. There's even medical plans as well if they have like epilepsy or anything. But like by kind of as an educator, I cannot diagnose a child being like, "Well, I've noticed a couple symptoms of autism here. You have autism." I can't do that. I can suggest to the parent, "Hey, so I've recorded some, written down some symptoms here, but I noticed that you might not necessarily speak out, but in a nicer manner of just like, hey, I was just going to talk to your doctor about because we've recognized some symptoms of possible on the spectrum, so or obviously over time and to kind of like soften the blow a little bit because obviously like I said I can't diagnose a child, but in a sense of just like kind of having a plan in place to kind of help guide them, and that's what I would do.
Okay, yeah, that sounds very empathetic and very considerate. So when you are talking to the parents about these things, how do they usually react?
I haven't really had that case yet because of course it wasn't really my position to do so. Only the higher ups, technically speaking, like a supervisor. But in a sense of I've had great communications with parents. I haven't really had a bad one, knock on wood. But obviously, if that were to come, like obviously make sure that we're calm and having a private space too. Because obviously, if it's on the open, I'm like, I don't want my child or everyone to know that my child has autism, right? Not that it's a bad thing, but it's more of
Yeah.
having a private space and having that, openness, being like, hey, so we've noticed some things and we've recorded some things. We're wondering what we can do. Because when I was in college, I've noticed we had to go through a lot of things. Like, for example, there's a saying called uh, head in the sand, like an ostrich in the sand, because the head in the sand for the parent, because different parents can take it. Some parents be like, yeah, let's go, let's do this, let's do some earlier intervention work, which is the main thing what we're looking for. Or there's some ones where they are like, no, my kid don't, she's fine. Well, you say that, but as an educator that we've been in the field, we've noticed these things. So like not obviously shaming the parent that they're not doing the best thing, but obviously, making sure that like, hey, we've noticed these things and being a kind and an open person to be make sure that like if they don't take it, that's fine. Maybe like look a bit more into it, get some hard evidence because you don't know how the parent will take it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because sometimes parents do like they hear like their kid has autism or something, and they just get really upset. They're like, "No, there's no way." Because I feel like
Mhm.
some people still think that when they think of something like autism, they think of like someone who like can't even speak and they're just completely unable to function in society. When in reality, there's layers to it. There's different levels, and I feel like a lot of people who are even famous have certain illnesses that you would never even think twice about, right?
Of course.
Yeah, so I think as society has gone on, we've become more accepting of mental illnesses in certain ways, and people are starting to get more like knowledgeable about them and the depth that they can have.
Mhm.
All right. Yeah. So what's another issue you've dealt with with the children that you work with in terms of mental health?
Um, like I said, there's the ostrich in the sand where the parents like, my child's fine.
Mhm.
Okay. But then there's also like, you know, specific situations where, sorry, can you repeat the question again?
I was just asking for another issue you've had with kids.
Um, Kind of, it's hard because obviously I've worked with more younger children. Like for example, as a registered ECE, I've worked with, let's just say, kindergartners to grades 6. So very, still very young, but typically like around the grade 1s or 2s, they tend to be like, I don't want your help, I'm fine. And it's very hard to kind of communicate to them because some of them, everyone's different. Some of them might be reacting angry, so they might be, needing food, or maybe they're upset, so maybe they need a hug. So I forget what it's called, but it's a pyramid. I think it's I will have to send you the link or what it's called. But
Yeah.
I think it's like by Shank, or I can't remember, but mainly it's different. It's a pyramid little thing where they have like food, security, family, um, like different things to make like shelter, even like because specifically how I've learned, if a child's upset, they're not just upset for a reason, because they might be upset at a friend. They might be upset because, well, they're hungry, so they're a little bit more irritated, or maybe they need to use the bathroom, or maybe they have some trouble at home, so they're a little bit more irritated or irritable. Um, so kind of like, obviously, I wouldn't say dissecting, but kind of just like understanding and supporting. Be like, okay, I've noticed you're this. Have you eaten? No. Oh, that's the reason. Then they're perfectly fine right after. Or maybe they're like, a little bit shy to adults. Maybe they're having a bit of trouble at home with mommy and daddy. So kind of like building that connection that they have. Because I know when I used to work at my previous workplace, I had parents say like the only reason they come to school is because they love being with you guys in this specific, care setting. So it's by having that connection and that, overall be like, I don't want to go to school, but I want to go to here. So let's do this thing. So like having that overall thing with children is just so, big, because it's kind of like making a stand, or making a connection with them, which is amazing.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like you really understand these children well and you know what they need. Were you referring to the
Yeah.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah, because you're describing it and I was thinking pyramid, yeah. So at the bottom of that would be like food, shelter, water, that stuff which
Yeah.
you need for survival. And then on top of
Yes.
that is security. And then I think after that is loving and family and stuff. And then
Hmm.
beyond that is like your self-esteem and then self-actualization.
Yeah. So
So
kind of, no, go.
you're saying with these kids, you need to focus on the bottom parts first, and once you know those are satisfied, you can go above and above.
Yeah, so kind of
So,
just like first seeing like if none of the bottoms ones work because they're still being a little bit more, irritable or angry, by going to the next one, be like, okay, maybe it's not here. Maybe like trying different ones, because obviously they're, you want to make a safe space, and help them calm down and make sure that they can be open and loving and supportive, rather than
mm,
having that broken, angry, irritable self.
yeah, that's actually really interesting. I never thought that the Maslow's hierarchy of needs would apply to this in particular.
Mhm.
But yeah, now that you explain it, it makes a lot of sense. That's good. And earlier you touched on ADHD. Do you think that ADHD has really affected your career?
Um, in some cases, yes. And I mean, I'm not saying that, like, obviously I've been turned down because of ADHD. But in a sense of just like, having, doing extra things or doing different things to help accommodate it. Like, for example, within the field, like, I tend to be a bit of a perfectionist, which is typically part of my ADHD self, or very organized, like, or, needing a little bit more help with comprehension, for example, like reword those words. Oh, perfectly understand. Like, It's just and even with my ADHD, I am so enthusiastic to children, which is great for the work I work with, right? So just having that enthusiasm, the love, and the kindness is great. I mean, don't get me wrong, the anxiety can also take effect because obviously, having the stress and sometimes, and I know in the past, I've been more on my work rather than my actual home balance, and it was more off the scale. So obviously, then it turned into burnout. So making sure that now with a different job that I can be able to, you know, have that work and life balance and have a bit more consistency rather than, you know, making a name for myself or, do too much that I'm going to burn out.
So you think work-life balance is super important. What
Very
do
much
you
so.
do? What have you done to focus on that work-life balance and make it more in your favor then?
Um, Personally for me, I'm still working on it, but in the near future, of course, mainly like obviously having that relaxing moment and safe space. And I'm not saying work is not a safe space, but in the sense of just like separating the work life with church life, with friend life, with home life. Still having that connection and faith with everyone still, but in a sense of just like not change who I am, but to make sure that like my mental state is, you know, in a good state. For example, like having my relaxation with music, kind of like calm myself. Bedtime routines need to be tea. Kind of having that, even meditation, which is I'm still trying to do, and I noticed when I started doing it, it helped me so much. It might sound stupid when I first did it. I was like, nothing ain't gonna work. When reality, like you're calming the mind, you're calming the body, and you're just relaxing. Even like a little bit of yoga when you're doing exercises, breathing techniques. One thing with my anxiety is I do breathing techniques, whether that be box breathing, balloon breathing. I even teach the children breathing techniques. But whenever you're in that stress moment, to be able to have that calm state so you're not so much burnt out in your work life. So then you bring it into your home life. So kind of having that state of peace. So maybe doing things you love, like whether that be dirt biking, whether that be reading, whether that be art, whether that be video games, to make sure that you have that calm peace and so your brain's not running 100 miles a minute thinking about things for work when in reality you need some space.
Yeah, those all sound like really good like methods to ease your own mind. I feel like a lot of the times our mind will go just at 100 miles per hour when you want it to slow down. And yeah, I
Mhm.
think meditation could be good for that. And as you said, like just sitting down and relaxing sometimes.
Of course.
So when how do you usually go about teaching the kids this?
It depends. Like, for example, if not when they're really like very flustered, because obviously, like now their brain's going at 100 miles a minute. So obviously, it's hard to, you know, get their attention because they're like thinking about this, because they're like so angry. So, kind of like in a sense of just like helping them calm down, whether that be like, hey, you need a hug? Like, get on their eye level is the main thing because if you're up tall, they're like, "You're scary, you're scaring me." Get down on your knees, be like, "Hey, so Stacy," as an example, "Are you feeling okay? Are you hungry? Oh, let's breathe in." Like what I've always taught with even youngers is for breathe in, breathe out is just smell the flower, blow out the candle. So it's a simple thing that you can use for kids. I've done even mindfulness books. I've done, mindfulness activities. I've done breathing sheets to kind of have that, kind of like, okay, let me go to a mindfulness book because I'm upset. Let me look at something. Okay, breathe in, breathe out. And then even having like a little card on my side or on my hip to be like, let's do this together. Just make sure that I'm good as well rather than being flustered. So make sure that I'm calm, oxygen mask on for you. Perfect. Let's do this together. But having those techniques is great because rather than going in hot headed, dear gosh, it's not going to end well. So kind of just making sure that you're both in a calm state. Okay, now that we're calm, let's talk. What happened? What's the problem? Are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Is it a friend? What's wrong? Is it okay?
Um, wow, yeah, I never thought about it like that. You seem like you really know your stuff, and you know how to get down to earth with these kids.
Thank you.
Yeah, so do you feel fulfilled doing your job?
As I said, I've only worked within the field for almost 2 years, so not I wouldn't say everything's been fulfilled. Um, but obviously, I guess building the connections with the children is one of the main things I love doing because, like I said, having that inclusion, the love and support that they get is a main thing.
Yeah, so seeing those kids be so happy all the time after you've helped them, how does that make you feel?
It makes me feel, just kind of like, it, and put it in a different perspective. For example, let's just say someone with nonverbal autism, as an example, you know, this is an example. Fred, you know, as I said, has autism, is nonverbal, and you've been working with him for like, a year and a half, and he doesn't really use words as much. And then next thing you know it, near the end of the year, he says my name perfectly. And I'm just like, it's just an overall astoundingness. It's like, I've worked with you so much. We've worked so hard and you've met your goal. It makes me tear up literally because to see how hard I have worked and even other coworkers to see that you have now said my name and we've worked so hard together. It's happy that you've met your goal. You've reached your momentum, and even then you can go even further to make full more sentences. So to even hear that is amazing. To even with different children, preschoolers, toddlers, school agers, you name it, by seeing them reach their goals, and obviously you're going to see them more into like infants and toddlers because well they're still young and they're still getting to those physical developmental stages in their life, but even then, like, to see them hit those milestones and in those stages is amazing because even at our age we still have milestones, like for example, not just like marriage or children down the line, but in a sense of just like more of like the mental state. For example, it could be a relationship building, it could be self-esteem, it could be a physical aspect too. Like it depends because everyone's different.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense that even as adults, we have to keep building and keep growing. For example, like as I said earlier with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we already have the security and we have the food and shelter. So we got to focus on our self-esteem and our self-actualization.
Exactly.
Yeah. And do you think the kids are focusing more on the lower parts than just like food and shelter? Or are they also trying to self-actualize?
I mean, it varies in different ages, like in regards to their developmental needs. Like for example, youngers or well, like toddlers, absolutely not. I mean, they're way too young. I'm surprised if they
Yeah.
do. But in a sense of just like a sixth grader might touch on it, but I wouldn't say that, they're deep diving into it. So they kind of like I said, with the hierarchy of needs of just like it depends on what they need. So mainly for younger children, it's just the bottom layer of just like, okay, you're angry or you're upset. Let me do it those ones first. Mainly the higher ones because of like them being older, they're looking for they have peer pressure, they have popularity. They're looking for different needs and wants than a younger child. For example, a younger child might be wanting a toy like a unicorn toy or squishmallow, but then an older child might want like a friend or a boyfriend or a girlfriend because they're older. So kind of like different ages want different needs, but and as a matter of speaking they are in needing of something else. For example, like security, food, shelter. Like for example, a 2-year old is more likely to need food rather than a toy. Well, in a case. But then over for a sixth grader or even a 10th grader, they're more of needing, security rather than, looking for that boyfriend and girlfriend because in reality, there comes to be peer pressure. So making sure that they're also open, especially in an older age too, to build that connection too. So like, hey, anything's happened, let's talk about it.
Yeah, okay. That sounds really interesting that you get to see as children develop these different aspects of the pyramid coming in, like their peer pressure. When do you think peer pressure usually like starts coming in then for kids?
I mean, it varies. It can be at a very young age because, like, at grade 1, it's very much possible, but I wouldn't say, like, I've seen it in grade 1, but of course, it takes a lot more effect mainly in middle school or grade 5. Like, it varies, like I said, in different typical situations, but, like, middle school and high school, it does tend to come a lot more. That's typically the main problem rather than, like, food, water, and shelter. But I would say is that sometimes it does pretend or tend to come into with youngers. Like for example, like oh, Fred didn't want me to play with this toy, okay, or something like that. Like even though it's like something small, like or they're fighting over something because they're peer pressured into hit somebody or because they're young and they're still developing as well. So kind of like building on that. And I forgot where I was gonna go. Great. But in a sense of just like yeah, no, I don't know.
Well, I was just asking, like, when do you think mostly the peer pressure starts coming in for kids?
Yeah, like I said, it definitely comes into a lot more of an older age just because as from my past, obviously looking for that popularity and you want that peer pressure, you want to be at a specific like your needs are somewhere else. For example, wanting to be in this popular group, but then obviously with youngers, well, I want a unicorn toy. Fred got a unicorn toy. I want this unicorn. Like their their needs and wants are definitely in a different state. So obviously it can happen that a younger does have peer pressure into doing things, but I think it's, you know, mainly that peer pressure and that wanting things and to have that popularity, to have that money, to have this job, to have these things, and especially with, socially, we do at an older age have that more social aspect with friends and relationships at an older age because of that. Like, well, Daisy has 15 girlfriends, like, as in a sense of like, friends that are girls, but I have zero. Like, wanting that approval. That's what mainly comes in older age even now as young adults we're wanting that approval from either mom, dad, siblings, uh family, friends, celebrities, icons, god, you never anything to have that approval because at a younger age you're like huh, what's approval, like they're not wanting to be approved maybe by mommy and daddy, but in the sense of like they're not really looking for that, they're not looking, for example, a lot more young, a different state is like for example mainly in a different point of view is that kids don't look at different points in society like sex, gender, race, religion and think well you're disgusting because you believe in this. They don't do that because they're learned that, so technically speaking it builds on through their life because of what their trauma is or what they've learned, or what they've regained, and building on into society. So mainly I believe it's in the older age they do believe in peer pressure because of a different like they have more social aspect in the, for example, the earlier elect document, which is early learning, uh I forget what it's called, but it's the elect today for the Ontario document we typically use. So, for example, school agers have a different developmental things. For example, um, social and friends, or the continuum of development as well. But then, of course, with youngers, it's more of just like palm grasp and writing, like with the grasp of it. But then when there's writing for when you're older, so there's different ways of saying it, but I think it varies, but I definitely think it's more for older.
Okay, that makes sense. And do you think that society kind of puts these things onto us? Like we wouldn't naturally have any of these issues?
Oh, for sure. I think society does play a lot into it. For example, even coming to a little more of a deeper part, for example, like social media, especially around at 13, kids are wanting like, oh, Stacy has Instagram or Snapchat. I want this. And then you start seeing them being influenced by the wrong people. For example, people with slim waist. Not that that's a bad thing, but like kind of getting the wrong idea and ideology by having this. different person. Like, for example, models with a skinny waist and big boobs and a big butt. Oh, I want that. But that can result in eating disorders and stuff like that. So, kind of like, personally, for me, if I was a parent, take lightly on the social media because I know that it can be very it can give it can give a lot of like eating disorders, depression, anxiety because you're wanting to do these things. So like for example, trends a lot. Like I remember when I was younger, there was the Kylie Jenner challenge or whatever. When you want big lips, let's do this.
Yeah, I
It's
think I
funny and
remember
weird,
that too.
but even then, like having trends is like, well, everyone's gonna do it. There's safe ones, but there's also bad ones. I've seen ones where they harm themselves because it's a trend, and I'm just like, it hurts me because some of these children are so much younger, and especially a lot of people do, you know, I don't know if I should be able to say this, but there's a lot of suicidal rates going up. A lot of people, and it's not mainly older people, like older like parents. Not say that that doesn't happen, but the average person that does harm themselves is typically in high school because they're wanting that approval from this popular group, or they're wanting this approval from mom and dad, or they're wanting this approval from their boyfriend or girlfriend. And every like I said, personally in my past, I want this approval. I want this. I want this. I want this. I want this. But then as soon as I started to grow my faith and connection with God, I dropped that approval. I'm like, give a piece of I don't care. Like I rather just the approval's for myself. Am I doing the right thing? That's what I'm doing. Am I doing the wrong thing? Am I doing like I want to make sure that I'm, taking care of my health rather than, you know, taking it in the wrong path, like addictions or, harming myself with getting an ED, like making sure that I'm taking care of myself rather than wanting this approval to who I'm not gonna be.
Yeah, I get what you mean. So you want to focus on approval of yourself and with your faith rather than of other people.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, and you also talked about social media. Like when I was growing up, social media wasn't that much of a thing. Like I feel like maybe in high school it was, but in middle school, not really. So, but I feel like nowadays, even like toddlers have their iPads out all the time. Like one time I was walking by and this toddler was talking about Skibbity Toilet, like, and I just feel like it's kind of indicative of how integral our phones are with our lives now, especially with the younger generation. And since you
Mhm.
work with them, the younger generation so often, do you see that as well?
I mean, sadly, yes, but specifically for the different parameters and policies that I've worked with in different companies, is that you don't bring your phone to school. Because, I mean, specifically in high school is different, which is one reason why we typically see the popularity and the approval of things. But like by having in the different cares I've worked with, is that not having your phone in here because then, you have that safe space to do activities, build these connections rather than building connections online because sometimes those can be a little bit, not good in a case with like abuse or human trafficking is a big thing too. Now, I know it's a very uh, timid topic, but kind of like, some of these children are like clueless to those topics. Like a 3-year-old's not going to know what human trafficking is, but us adults do. So, like, obviously when you're younger, you're not really taking in those facts of like, okay, well, I'm just wanting to have some friends. Oh, Bobby followed me. Bobby wants to meet me. Okay, let's meet him. Yeah, girl, do you know Bobby? Do you know where he lives? Like, you need to know the information, and it's sad because especially within Ontario, there's a lot of human trafficking, and to kind of I've when I was at my church, we've done like what's called the Daughters Project, which is specifically for younger children, like which is like ages 6 to 12, no, 6 to like I think grade 4 or 5 to grade 9 or 10. The point is like that point is yes, they're trying to build up the self-esteem and confidence with you know the children to build that confidence, and then to go away from that human trafficking, to rather than looking for that approval, to look with the connection with God, right? And even different points of just like rather than, looking onto social media for that approval, just, looking for yourself as well. So having that connection with these younger or older girls as well.
Okay, yeah, that sounds really great. So, unfortunately, that's going to be the end for today because we're kind of running out of time, but it was really nice talking to you. I feel like we had a really good conversation. And if anyone wants to contact you, how would they do that?
Yeah. I would say Instagram.
Okay, so what's your Instagram?
Emma, EMMATYRRELL 1000.
All right, sounds great. Okay, well, that's all for today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.